Good afternoon and welcome to Rutgers University Libraries programming celebrating Open Access Week. Today we will have two presentations on research identity and scholarly open access at Rutgers. These sessions are being recorded and will be available on the Rutgers University Libraries YouTube channel and webpage following the week's presentations. Our first presenter, Joseph Deodato, will present Making Your Research Openly Accessible with SOAR. Joseph is the Discovery Services Librarian at Rutgers University Libraries. He is responsible for developing and managing services for finding and accessing library collections, including the library's discovery platform, QuickSearch, and institutional repository, SOAR. Working closely with library staff, patrons, and vendors, he develops user-centered tools and strategies to improve access to the library's print and electronic collections to increase their visibility and use in support of research, teaching, and learning. Go ahead and take it away, Joseph.
Thanks, Tony. Welcome, everybody, to day two of Open Access, our Open Access Week presentations. I'm going to be talking about SOAR today, as Tony said. And a little bit about the scholarly open access requirements, both at Rutgers and then those that are required by many of our federal funders. So I am going to share my screen here. Okay. So this presentation will essentially walk us through the process of, well, first give you a little introduction to what SOAR is. And talk about the Rutgers Open Access Policy. And we will also be talking about federal public access requirements, specifically those required by NIH and a lot of the other federal institutions, federal funding agencies. We'll walk through the process of depositing your work in SOAR and benefits that accrue from that. And then we will briefly talk about support for research data, since this conversation is often connected to making your work available. And then we'll hold questions actually for the end, after the second presentation. So I'll go ahead and get started. So SOAR stands for Scholarly Open Access at Rutgers, and is an institutional repository where Rutgers researchers can deposit their scholarly works and discover works authored by their colleagues. It was developed in response to the Rutgers University Open Access Policy for the purpose of providing free public access to Rutgers research and scholarship. The Open Access Policy stipulates that all faculty, graduate students, and postdocs deposit a copy of each scholarly article produced while at Rutgers at the time of its acceptance for publication. Now, this policy does allow for exemptions and temporary embargoes based on publisher policies. However, most publishers do permit the deposit of the author's accepted manuscript. This is a process commonly known as self-archiving, or what is known as green open access. The accepted manuscript is the author's final draft of a paper after it has been peer reviewed, but before it has been typeset and formatted by the publisher. Researchers don't have to research their publisher's policy before submitting their work to SOAR. You also don't have to fret too much about which version of the paper. We will do all that for you at the time of deposit. The library staff will research all rights and permissions, make sure that we're cleared to actually, deposit this into the repository, and then we'll, get back to you, or if another version is needed, or if any changes need to be made. So, in addition to the Rutgers Open Access Policy, there are also open access requirements stipulated by the federal government and maybe several other funding agencies about making your work accessible if you are a recipient of funding. And in 2022, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy issued a directive, commonly referred to as the Nelson Memo, to all federal agencies to implement policies making publications and supporting data resulting from federally funded research publicly accessible without any embargo by December 31st, 2025. So just some basic facts about this directive. Again, it applies to any research that's funded either entirely or in part by a U.S. federal agency. It requires all research outputs be made immediately accessible without embargo, which was new. This hadn't been done previously. And it applies to both the publication and the underlying scientific data, also a new stipulation. It also requires all researchers and research outputs to have a persistent digital identifier. So in the context of the research output, that's a DOI. For the researcher, that's an ORCID ID, and that's something Ying-Ting will be talking about in her presentation in a moment. It also requires all research outputs to be machine readable and accessible via assistive technology, and allows researchers to include in their grant proposal any costs associated with complying with these requirements. So, lots of reasons to make your work openly accessible. While peer-reviewed articles tend to be the primary focus of a lot of institutional and funder open access policies, researchers are welcome to submit all types of scholarship to SOAR, including book chapters, conference papers, presentations, etc. Works deposited by authors are made available through the SOAR research portal, which we'll see in a moment, and are indexed by Google and other search engines where they can be discovered by and read by researchers worldwide. So what are the benefits of depositing in SOAR? There are several really for you. For one, obviously, it makes your research more openly accessible to researchers and scholars around the world. Studies show that it also tends to increase the visibility, use, and impact of your work. Things that are open access tend to get found more easily, get cited more readily. So there is generally a bump in visibility with this. Your work is preserved on a secure server with a persistent URL. Every deposit in SOAR gets its own DOI. So we are committed to making sure that that resource stays accessible and is always available through that DOI, ensuring permanent access. And lastly, it, of course, as I mentioned, helps fulfill funder and institutional mandates regarding open access. So how does one go about depositing their work in SOAR? First off, you would go and visit the portal, which is available at soar.rutgers.edu, and click on the link to deposit your work. And then you'll be prompted to log in with your Rutgers Net ID. Once you do, you'll be taken to your personal researcher profile, which contains any information about you and any works that have already been added to the repository. Some of this information may have been supplied by you at some time. Some of it may have been harvested from external sources, such as profiles in Pivot, or from the web, or from the Rutgers University website. So we might already have some information about you. Others might, other additional information can be supplied by you. However, one thing I should note is that these profiles are not public. They are private and only visible to their user. There is an option to make them public, but we are not doing that at this time. And there are other services out there if you're interested in researcher profiles, specifically those offered by the Office for Research, which uses another platform called Research with Rutgers to create researcher profiles. So this version of your profile is actually only visible to you, which is important to make clear to folks. But so this is what you see when you log in, and then you would click Add Content to deposit a new work. Then you're taken to a form where the options to enter your work will vary depending on what you select. So the first thing you do is select the type of work you're submitting. So in this case, we are choosing to deposit a journal article. And then you'll be prompted for the article title, DOI, or PubMed ID. Any of those things, when entered, if your work is published, will automatically pull data from a scholarly index called Central Discovery Index, which will pull in any information about the publication and already populate the form for you. If your work is unpublished, it wouldn't have that data. So you would have to enter it in yourself. But if it's already published, it should be able to find it and pre-populate the form for you. Then you'll be prompted to upload your file, or you can also add a link to the work if it already exists somewhere else. Adding your file, I should note, also will pre-populate the form depending on the type of file. SOAR may be able to extract information right from the file, metadata that will populate the form. So the idea here is to make this as simple and as painless as possible, and wherever possible, automate it so that you don't have to do too much typing. Then you'll be taken to a screen where you can review the data that was either entered or pulled in for your work, make sure that it's all correct, and then you just click the terms and conditions box that lets us know that you've read the policy and agreed to its terms. The policy essentially just explains what rights you're giving over to Rutgers with the work, which is a non-exclusive right to make the work available to the public. And it doesn't infringe on your ability to do anything else with the work yourself, of course, including publishing. Once your work is submitted, it will be reviewed by library staff, who, like I mentioned, will check rights and permissions, check with the publisher, see what rules and requirements they have with regards to self-archiving. Then you'll be notified via email once your submission has been published and provided with the DOI so that you can find your work in the repository. You will also receive a monthly usage report with view and download statistics so that you can kind of see the impact of your work, how people are engaging with it. And of course, if you don't find those messages helpful, you can always unsubscribe at any time by actually logging into SOAR and then editing your notification preferences in the settings. Now, for some researchers, the additional task of uploading their scholarship to a repository can seem daunting. Faculty can save time by submitting works in bulk or by appointing a proxy to manage their deposits. So, for example, if you wanted to submit a list of your works in bulk so that you don't have to do this one at a time, you can export a list of citations from another platform. This could be ORCID, it could be Google Scholar, be Scopus. We actually tend to prefer Scopus more often than not because they have more complete metadata. And then you would save your citations in BibTeX or IRS format, and then send us the exported file via email. Of course, if any of this sounds too complicated, we're happy to do this step for you. It's easy for us to go and pull data off of Scopus and then import a list of your publications. However, once your publications have been added to SOAR, we'll send you, a notification and some instructions on how to upload copies of your work to make them available to researchers. Again, the purpose of SOAR is not necessarily to serve as an index of, a list of your publications. It's actually to provide access to those publications, right? To provide free public access to Rutgers research. So if we do import, your records for you, because in some cases it could be, 100, depending on the life of, some from faculty members' careers, it could be the whole life of your work. But again, we do expect that you'll be depositing copies of your work to make them available. The other option for folks who, are too busy can be to appoint a proxy to manage your account for you. So this is essentially giving someone, at Rutgers the ability to manage your deposits on your behalf. It could be an administrative assistant, it could be a student worker, a colleague. They just have to have a valid Rutgers email address. So to do that, you would log into SOAR, click Edit Profile, and then select Researcher Proxies and enter their email. Not going to say too much about ORCID because, again, Yingting will be talking about this in a moment. But there's also the ability within SOAR to register and link your ORCID ID. ORCID is a persistent identifier that distinguishes you from other researchers and links all of your research outputs, affiliations, and activities in one place. Connecting your ORCID ID to SOAR links your SOAR profile to your ORCID profile, and then can automatically push information about your research outputs from SOAR to ORCID. so that anything that you deposit in SOAR will also show up on your ORCID profile. To connect your ORCID ID, all you need to do is to log into SOAR, edit your profile, and click Register or Connect your ORCID ID. So now, as we've seen, some of the open access mandates don't just apply to research publications. Funders, especially the NIH and other federal agencies, increasingly require researchers to do two things: submit a data management and sharing plan explaining how your data will be collected, preserved, and shared. And secondly, to make your data publicly available by depositing in an established repository. Now, some funders will tell you to deposit in a very specific repository. Others will tell you to just choose, the most appropriate or relevant disciplinary repository. There are several out there that are, for physics and chemistry and other areas that you can just deposit to. In the case that your data is not cannot be deposited to one of these repositories, SOAR can be used as a last resort option. So researchers can deposit data in SOAR up to 5 gigs per file. But in general, SOAR is considered, like I said, a repository of last resort. Researchers are advised to consult with their local library data specialist to identify the best place to SOAR and share their data. In addition to curating your data, other services provided by the library to help you manage your research data include training and consultation services. So we have lots of workshops and webinars on data collection, analysis, visualization, and so forth that are available all the time throughout the year by the libraries. We also have several webinars and documentation about using what's called the DMP tool. This is a free open source application that helps researchers create data and share data management plans. It's essentially a, kind of like a form wizard where you go and you just answer questions about your data, and then it'll walk you through the process of all the things that should be included in your data management plan. So it'll prompt you with questions. And by the time you're finished answering those questions, you have a working data management plan. The library also offers one-on-one consultations on how to create data management plans and how to select a repository. Again, most funders will require to deposit in a specific repository, and some may not. So we can guide you to the best place to save your and preserve your data. So that's essentially SOAR in a nutshell. So thanks for your attention and thanks for listening. And if you have any more thoughts or comments or questions, please visit us on the web at soar.libraries.rutgers.edu, or feel free to email me directly. Like I said, we're going to save questions until the end, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues now. Thanks.
Joseph. So our second presenter is Yingting Zhang, who will present Managing Your Research Identity with ORCID. Yingting is the Research Services Librarian at the Robert Wood Johnson Library of the Health Sciences and an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Medicine of the RWJ Medical School of Rutgers University. She provides research support services to Rutgers Health researchers, including developing NIH biosketches and NIH data management and sharing plans, complying with NIH public access policy, conducting systematic reviews, supporting scholarly publishing, and teaching and performing health sciences information services. Thanks, and I'll let Yingting take it away.
Thank you, Tony. And I'm going to talk about managing researcher identity with ORCID. So I have to disclose this is mostly based on the book chapter that I wrote, but also pertaining to Rutgers, since mostly it's our clients here today. So let me share, see if I can. Where's the share? Bear with me. Still half brain is on vacation. So you see the other side.
We see your note slide.
Yeah, let me switch. Okay.
Okay, it works.
So yes. research identity is very important to manage because in the digital age, the general public surfacing the internet, browsing here and there, they leave traces, they leave their marks in this online world. The same thing with research activities. So nowadays, researchers engaging research activities through various kinds of RIM systems, research information management system. I'm sorry, Victoria knows that I tend to use a lot of acronyms. So when you have a representation online, how you make your researcher profile looks like, it's very important because you can encourage collaboration. You can also make your research more visible. You can make your reputation more like reputable. So there are so many different platforms. So ORCID is the one that has been widely recognized. So today I focus on ORCID. I will go through what is ORCID. It could be boring, but I will say it very quickly, and why researchers should care about ORCID and what benefits it will bring to you. And at Rutgers, we how to create and connect ORCID with your NetID, and then how to populate the ORCID records, how to integrate record ORCID ID into other research systems. As we all know, ORCID stands for ORCID Researcher and the Contributor ID. ORCID, we often hear ORCID and ORCID ID, so don't mix these things up. ORCID is an organization, a nonprofit organization. It is accessible to anyone in the world. It's a nonprofit. ORCID ID is the digital identifier. It's unique and it's persistent. And that's why the NSPM came out 2022 in the Nelson memo. ORCID is not spelled out. However, it meets all the requirements of what the NSPM requires. So ORCID ID helps you to distinguish your name from others with similar or same names. I'll show you an example as my name, which is so common. An ORCID record will showcase your research profile, including your education, employment, grants, awards, and most of all, scholarly works. Now, when we talk about ORCID, we think of major three things: ORCID registry, ORCID ID, ORCID record, or you can say four things. Another thing is interoperability. So the registry is, if you go to the ORCID.org, you can register for ORCID ID just 3 seconds, almost like a don't, 3 steps, and you're done. But that's not it. You only get the number. When you registration, you automatically assigned the 16-digit number, which is important because that distinguishes from you, from others. But don't forget about the record. I will tell you later, like you need to populate it. If you don't populate it, you're pretty much not using the whole ORCID benefits. And interoperability, some depends on you. You need to integrate like by taking initiative, but a lot of time also institutional level, which we couldn't do anything. So depends on the level. Now, ORCID ID, as I mentioned, it's a 16-digit. It's a unique, persistent. This personal data, it's like your social security number. It's only unique to you. So I don't know if I remember the name. It's a 16-digit. So if you don't remember, that's also okay. I show you how to distinguish yourself through other ways. But this number is unique to you only. Why ORCID is important? First of all, we need to meet various stakeholders' requirements. When you submit a manuscript as a corresponding author, initially, you must have an ORCID ID. But nowadays, I found more and more, when I'm not the co-author, I was asked to input my ORCID ID. A lot of times, it's like you're in their author system already, scholar system, author system. So it's already like connecting you. If not, you just enter the number. So for publishers, journals, publishers required, grant funders, they require it, especially the federal agencies. They require ORCID ID. Actually, ORCID Science CV is required effectively. The only format next May 2025, May 25, 2025. So I'm sorry, so many fives. ORCID will be required, and in Science CV, the Word template will be gone by then. So I'm already being requested to give workshop on science on biosketches, which will be using ORCID ID. Now others like research profiles, you can integrate it, and Rutgers implemented ORCID, so it will be very good if you connect your ORCID ID with NetID, and I will show you why it's actually very important. A lot of repositories, like I say, Pivot RP or SOAR, you connect these systems through the ORCID ID. So requirements, and next thing is, it really helps to distinguish or disambiguate your names. And it will allow your scholarly works more visible, that can promote more opportunities for research collaboration. And also you can connect various kinds of research activities through ORCID. This is I got it from the web, but originally I created it. So let me just hide this one because it's. So this slide shows the steps for you to create and connecting your new ORCID ID to Rutgers ID. This assuming that you don't have an existing ORCID ID yet. So what you can do is, the first thing is go to the website called personalinfo.rutgers.edu. When you are at this website, there is one tab called ORCID. You go to that tab. If you never connected, then it will have a prompt for you to create and connect. And then you register the ORCID ID, and then you authorize Rutgers to access your ORCID ID. So that makes them connected. But you're not done yet. A lot of people stopped there. You should still click log into ORCID and need to complete that whole process. But this can only be done once. So once now you log into ORCID ID and complete the linking process, your account is now created and connected to Rutgers. Now, once you have a connected ORCID ID with NetID, you don't even have to remember the ORCID account. You can log in through the Rutgers NetID, which is very convenient. I don't remember my ORCID account username or password. I always using the Rutgers login, the single log on. Now this slide shows if you already have an ORCID ID, how to connect it. So to connect your existing ORCID ID, you still need to log into personalinfo.rutgers.edu, and then you click the ORCID tab, and then the prompt, there will be, you sign in once, you just need to sign in to connect them. It's a lot easier because you already have an ORCID ID. So once you log into ORCID through the personalinfo.rutgers.edu, then you allow Rutgers to access your ORCID record. So then this one, and then the second part is the same as the previous one. So if you have any question, I can show you. Then you will say, hey, how does ORCID tab appear in our personal info? That's during our implementation team. I was serving on the implementation team after Jane Otto retired. So the IT folks and the human resources people and the Office of IRAP, they worked together. They make this tab available into this human resources website, basically. So this is showing the uniqueness of our institution. We launched this ORCID at Rutgers. Otherwise, other institutions won't have this feature. Once you connected your ORCID ID with your NetID, then go to your public directory, search your name. you will see that your ORCID ID is displayed on your public directory. And if collaborators are looking for people, like, they can collect your ORCID ID to see your profile. That's why I cannot stress enough that you need to populate your record. If you don't populate your record, people see an empty record. In my experience, I see many of the researchers have an empty ORCID record. You know why? I guess most of the reasons because when they were submitting manuscript or grant proposal, they were asked to provide the ORCID ID. So at that prompt, they create the ID, but they never actually go to the ORCID account to populate the profile. This is bad because with other collaborators, they see your number, they click it, they see nothing. They see only an empty record. So it presents you in a very negative way. So I strongly encourage you to populate your ORCID ID. I can show my record as an example, not necessarily good example, but at least showing my efforts. So as Joseph mentioned, once you have an ORCID ID, and then it can be integrated into various RIMs, various research platforms. So here in SOAR, you can see that the ORCID ID is integrated into SOAR. So I want to spend a few minutes on the ORCID record. So I talked about registry, I talked about ORCID ID, and then I talked about connecting your ID with NetID. Now I talk about ORCID record. So don't forget about your record. This is your profile. So in the ORCID record, it contains the number, of course, and your names, then biography. Putting the biography is actually very useful because then when you search your name, it's actually showing you as a little summary. So you can easily grab your own profile. Now, employment, education and qualifications, invited positions and the distinctions, that's like grants and awards, membership and the service, and also funding and the works. But remember, when you perform peer reviews, you are not the one who's going to put that into ORCID profile. It's really the journal or the publisher for which you provided the peer review service. They will automatically put in your record. So the last two, they're not really putting by you. They're putting by the trusted parties that you authorize them. Now, how to populate them? There are different kinds of ways. First, you can, of course, you can manually enter information. This shouldn't be the first because I normally I use search and the link the most. And then you can also using DOI number, or in most of my stuff is actually in PubMed. So I can just put the PubMed ID. And of course, if you have a scholar citations, a list, you can export it as a BibTeX file and then upload. This is useful for the folks who are just starting to create their record, populating their record. Then they can do by batch. But once you have done this batch once, in the future, every time you publish an article, you just add it like a one by one. It's a lot easier. And if you have an EndNote library with all your scholarly works, you can also export into the, I don't believe this file because it's a long time ago, some time ago, I tested it. It's the BibTeX format that was used. And then you added a lot of trusted parties, if you like. You can even add a research delegate, like the people who can help you to populate your profile. If you are lucky to have a delegate, to have a research assistant. I know a lot of our researchers are very busy handling all these by themselves. So once you have an ORCID ID, you can also integrate it into your NCBI account. Once you are in NCBI, then you go to the Science CV. ORCID tab is automatically there. So in the BioSketch, the section C for contribution to science, just to show the evidence, why you are qualified for this grant. So you can show them with your publications. You can get the publication, of course, from my bibliography, but you can also from ORCID. What's the difference? If your ORCID is integrated, then your biosketch has other sections, not just the section C. You have section A's and B. These biographical information, education can be pulled from Rutgers or from ORCID. So this way, it is very important. Then you can also connect your ORCID ID with DMP tool. So DMP tool, you develop the plan, and that plan is part of your scholarly works. It's acknowledged, so it's recognized as a scholarship. So when you have ORCID ID integrated, then DMP tool can push this plan into your profile to make it as a part of your scholarship. Other things that can be useful using the ORCID ID, you can search an author's publications. If you don't remember that person's, you can do by the ORCID ID. That can be more accurate. But then bear in mind, in the old, in the past, some of those literature, they don't link to with ORCID ID, or the author search is different, like 2020, I think full name was searchable. Before it was like a last name and first initial or middle initial. So searching by the number doesn't mean you will retrieve everything, because not everybody has ORCID ID, or even if you have the ORCID ID, I don't remember from when this can be actually searchable. So but this, yeah, be aware of that. So I also have several resources and useful links for you to, I keep it here in this slide. And then finally, if you have any questions, there is a group. I'm the only one right now because Laura's retired. So you send it to ORCID ID, I will receive it, or directly to me. And before I stop, I want to show you the website, like a little live demo very quickly. We do have time, right? So couple of minutes, let me just. So here are three websites. So Rutgers has already over 9,000 people connected their NetID, and they're connected their ORCID ID with their NetIDs. I run monthly report for Consuela, and so now it's like 9,000. So there are altogether 18,000 records with actually Rutgers domain in their ORCID profile. So that's a lot. When the Northwest librarian today asked me about ORCID, and she was quite impressed that we actually have so many integrated in over 9,000. And then this one is, okay, my name, I told you, go to orcid.org. Maybe I can do it very quickly, do orcid.org. And then I search my name, because my name is men or women, they use it. It's very, very common, although my Chinese name is very, very pretty. My father named it a very good name, but it's all gone. Just with the letters, you cannot even see. So from here, how many? So you can see, wow. So which one is really me? I put a little affiliation or bio things to differentiate. If I remember my ORCID ID, that's even easier. So I can just click. Then you come over here. What you see from public view is really your public profile. But behind the scene, I have a lot of invisible, like I didn't display them. So you have the bio, you have the employment, and then you have education, you have professional activities, and okay, that's a lot. And then you have funding, and then you have works. So the works can be directly pushed from Crossref or DataCite if they'll do from the DOI match, or it can be added by myself. It can be also pushed in from Scopus. Like this is, but the ones connected, I thought I have a lot more. Why now they are all just by me. But anyway, data site, what else? Data site, I thought I have Scopus. Well, Scopus here. And I thought also Web of Science. So if you have those trusted parties push those records in, that make it even more reliable, more trustable. So this, what I meant is you need to populate your record. You don't just leave it empty. And now we connected the unit, so I'm showing you to log in. That's the beauty of connecting your. So you're here. I'll never remember. So I do from my institution, and Rutgers is already here. So I just want to continue. Suggested one, sign in. And then it's in. Then if you look at it, see, I made my now X Twitter used to be. So I make them invisible. That's my Chinese name. And then you can see, okay, I didn't make this available. Why I didn't make this, only me. So you control what to be displayed, what not. And so this is your digital CV almost. So you should take good care of it and make sure your reputation is properly displayed over there, your digital identity. So that's all I want to say about ORCID. And we are ready to take any questions if you have.
So if you have any questions, please feel free to enter it into chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, I can make it so that you're allowed to talk. But as we wait for questions, thank you, Yingting, as well as Joseph, for your presentations. I learned a lot about integrating ORCID with that, as well as SOAR, because I only started in May, so I haven't been exposed to some of those things yet. So I appreciate that. A question came in. Don't you think that people don't populate their profiles because they understand that this is a surveillance system in a dangerous political environment?
I got this question a lot from the very beginning when ORCID was just implemented. And then when I remember I recorded all the questions I got, one of the questions, why do I need another channel for the university to monitoring me, to have surveillance of whatever I do? I really think you consider this is for your benefits. You make things more visible. You connected now, but you can disconnect when you leave the institution. The institution is not monitoring your research activity. It's more like if you have anything out, they will help you to promote. And if they really want to monitor you, they have plenty of other ways. You know, your annual report, your evaluation. This digital presence is really for your own benefit. Oh, I can say that. That's why you can see mine's like a widely populated. I don't worry about Rutgers is monitoring me or anyone's doing something harmful because you have the total control. If you find that they're not doing something proper, you disconnect. It's still under your control. It's not Rutgers disconnected. It's you. You can disconnect. But we have the policy. We have implementation. It will be good if you connect it because then a lot of things can take a place, you know. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
But Maria, you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to write and then I raised my hand. The question is for Joseph. Who actually can submit information to SOAR? Are there any limitations?
Because SOAR is intended to support the open access policy, it's anybody who the open access policy applies to. So that's faculty, graduate students, and postdoctoral researchers. However, it's mostly faculty who are depositing. And so we automatically create accounts for all Rutgers faculty so that they can just log in with their NetID. Grad students and postdocs are eligible deposits, but we don't automatically create the accounts because so few of them actually do, and there's more turnover there, right? So it would just be administrative overhead. So we create those accounts on demand. So if a grad student says, I want to deposit in SOAR, no questions are asked. We just go ahead and create an account for them, and then they can deposit. But it's those three classes of individuals.
Thanks.
Yep.
Mina, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Well, not anymore. Hold on.
What about now?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
good. Okay. My question is for Joseph. So I know different documents can be deposited into SOAR. My question is about presentations. Like, what is the criteria? Is there a criteria? What kind of a presentation can go in there? Like, can you put a poster presentation in there? Like, who is it like a decision body within SOAR that decides on what can get into SOAR? Or
I mean, basically it's so again, interpreting the spirit of the open access policy, right? The focus is on peer-reviewed journal articles. However, like I said, you could deposit any scholarship into SOAR. In terms of like the criteria, it's generally anything that you would put on your CV, right? So if a presentation would go on your CV when you go out, like on say your 1L or something like that, then that's something that would go into SOAR. If it's something that maybe is not as significant, in terms of scholarship, not so much. But again, SOAR staff we try not to make those calls necessarily if we can avoid it. It's only if something is so clearly outside the realm of what would be considered scholarly that we might raise questions. But otherwise, no presentation certainly is really too small. And you'll notice that if you go to deposit presentation, there's two options. There's conference presentation and there's just presentation, right? So if it was something like for this, for example, for this presentation, I could deposit it in SOAR if I wanted to. It wouldn't be really an issue.
Thank you. I mean, I know like we had this conversation also a while back ago in terms of like, some of the capstone projects and the kids, the student, and that's why I hear from faculty, what can be put in the SOAR? That was, but again, I guess that doesn't then, it's not eligible to be put into SOAR.
Well, with capstones, only because we have specific places where we archive student work. So most capstones are already archived in Alma D.
Right.
So we put them there, or student papers and projects and stuff like that. And then ETDs are in RU Core. So when it comes to those types of materials, since there's already a place for those, we keep them together.
Okay, so if just someone wants to have, I mean, again, like a very few students want to have them in both places, can them or no? You just refer them to the ETDs.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a thesis or dissertation, it should go in the ETDs. And the reason why I wouldn't say have it in both places, because you're going to get then 2 DOIs for the same item.
I see.
Okay, so it would be duplication,
Yes.
and then you would have 2 copies of the exact same thing with unique identifiers, and that would only cause kind of confusion, we would think. So in that case, we want to just create 1 copy that's going to be preserved going forward. And in the case of ETDs, it would be RE Core.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Let's see. Oh, another question came in. Where are the dissertations deposited and who manages that?
Yes. So dissertations are deposited in RU Core. Let me see if I could quickly pull up the link, but there is somewhere on the website says where you put them.
etd.rutgers.edu.
Yeah. So I'm putting the URL in the chat. So you would submit your ETD. There's a link there in the chat that gives you the instructions on how to submit your ETD. But they go in RU Core and they're managed by and RU Core is managed by library application development team. And there's a contact there on this site that I linked to for questions. So there's ETD_support@libraries. So if you have any questions about submitting ETDs, you can contact them. But that is managed separately from SOAR. There was discussion at one point about including ETDs in SOAR and having them all in one place, but I think administratively they made the decision to keep them separate, since again the purpose of SOAR was to support the open access policy, which ETDs were not really necessarily originally a part of.
Another question came up. With the 3 different places, SOAR, ETD, RUCore, are they all open access?
Yes. Yep,
Great.
all 3 of those places are fully open access. So anything that's in there, with the sole exception of if someone deposits something that the publisher requires an embargo on or some kind of access restriction, then the item gets deposited, it gets made available, but there might be a temporary embargo that says it won't actually be accessible for, say, usually it's 6 to 12 months based on the publisher's policy. But yeah, that would be the only exemption.
And is there a place that lists all 3 of these places and describes when to deposit or what gets deposited into each of those different sections?
No, that's a discussion that's kind of been ongoing, that there should be some kind of explanation. And I can tell you that SOAR, if you go to the SOAR website, there's an FAQ that says very clearly what goes in there, what the requirements are, who to contact. And then I think ETDs is very clearly spelled out. I think RUCore is maybe the one area where there's still a little gray and and there is some information on the website that's still outdated. So I can understand that there might be some confusion about what goes into RUCore, but that is something that I know folks are talking about, and I'm sure we'll clear up at some point.
Are there SOAR terms and conditions available for depositing items so that they can see them in advance?
I don't think that they are. You see them when you deposit your work, and I can kind of walk you through that if you like. Give me 1 second to pull something up.
Oh, I remember, Joseph, is we talk about like waivers, waivers and the forms we provide them.
Yes, so the waivers are on the SOAR website. So if you needed a waiver, say there was a work that you published that for whatever reason you could not make available, or publicly accessible, you can sign, you can have a waiver that just send us to say that this work is exempt. The open access policy does allow for exemptions, like I said. So that's there. The terms and conditions are visible when you actually are, at the point of need when you're actually depositing, but I'll show you what they look like. So this is it. It's just a couple paragraphs. If you can see here, I hereby grant to Rutgers a non-exclusive right to archive, reproduce, and distribute the deposited work in whole or part in its electronic format. And then it goes on to just, say that, it's your work, you own the copyright, and have the ability to deposit it, and it doesn't infringe on anyone else's rights. That's all the agreement is.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts and questions? Feel free to use the Q&A, or you can utilize chat if that's available to you. I'm new to the webinar format, so I think it might just be Q&A, or you can also raise your hand as well.
If I can, I want to address, I know Mina did ask a question of whether or not it's confusing to have 3 different places to deposit to. And I would just answer that by saying they are essentially 3 different services, right? They're different places where you can share work, but they have different goals, missions, etc. As far as whether or not it would be easier, it's hard to say. It might even be confusing to have one place if you didn't understand kind of where it was going or how it was being used.
Okay. Mina has raised her hand again, so you can go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so no, I know they all, provide different purposes, but it would be really helpful that is one website and kind of like give us 3 different maybe tabs. If you are, this is for SOAR, this is for ETD, this is for, dissertations. Right now, it just seems like things are all over the place. It's very hard to kind of point the faculty or students that, okay, this is the one, it's for you, for your purposes. Maybe just one site, just that can be, okay, if you can have, again, different tabs, different links. I mean, however you want to design it, that bring them in one place at least.
Yeah, no, I think that's a a good thought and something that we should probably look into. I know that and I know this gets said a lot, right, after the reorg. But after the reorg, there is going to be, a new, research support services unit that would presumably tackle a lot of these questions. And I think first and foremost among that would probably be the representation of research services on our website. Because I agree with you. I think what's happened over the years is that a lot of these services kind of developed in an ad hoc way over time. And so things got released at different times. And maybe now is a good time, again, once a unit is formed around this, to look at all these services comprehensively and think about how they should be organized and how we should be communicating about them. But I think that's a spot on, assessment and something that, yeah, we should consider moving forward.
Yeah.
I want to see if my understanding is correctly, because SOAR originally was a service to implement the Rutgers Open Access Policy, but the current SOAR is really the back end is Explorer. So it's totally separate from RU Core. ETD is part of the RU Core, but so that's why, Mina, it's really 2 different systems. And then SOAR, because everybody knows SOAR at Rutgers, so we retain the name SOAR, and we're using Explorer as our RIM system, and then implement or carry out our open access policy by allowing self-archiving.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, I agree that, these are different systems. It's just that, and I can tell you, a lot of people don't know SOAR. We know SOAR, but faculty or students have no clue, what it is. Again, my point is just bring them into one place. I know there are different systems. I know works differently. It's for different group, different line of work. Just bring them in one website, and then, put it 3 tabs, 3 links, whatever, to pretty it up, and then at least I know I can tell people, okay, you start here. But right now, you're just, it's hard to point it to, to faculty and students. And again, not all of them know what these things are. Thank you. This was very great conversation.
Well, and also, I mean, I would just add, Mina, like, I think we're not promoting these services in the way, that we should be, right? Especially with SOAR. It's something that kind of has fallen by the wayside in years, and we've acknowledged that, right? We're not pushing for it. People don't know about it. And if we're going to continue to provide the service, yeah, we should be promoting it. I think there is some hope, again, once this new research unit forms, that'll be something that they can take up, because I think up until this point, there really hasn't been the support structure needed to kind of make that push. But I'd like to think that at the very least, we can set up a program to kind of train the trainers, right? To train the liaisons.
Absolutely.
To talk, how should they be talking about this when they go out to their departments and they're having these conversations with their users? How should they present them to them? So again, you're saying all the right things, Mina. I think it's just taking us a long time to get there.
No, I know, and I get the fact that there a lot of good work has been done. All these 3 groups, they have done an excellent. They're doing a great job. It's just that as you said, not many people. We need to promote it better. We need, myself, we are, I need to be more, have a better training on it, so I can push it to other people. I can market it on behalf of the library. But thank you. This was a great conversation. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thanks, Mia.
Well, thank you everyone for attending today's presentation, celebrating International Open Access Week. We hope you'll join us tomorrow at noon, where we will host a panel presentation on understanding transformative agreements. So I encourage you to sign up for that, and I've shared the link in chat. And thank you everyone for your participation. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.